Welcome to Hill Country Homilies, weekly homilies from Holy Annunciation Orthodox Church in Liberty Hill, Texas. Holy Annunciation is an old calendar Orthodox church, sharing the faith of the apostles and the love of Christ with all who seek his truth. Now let's listen to this week's homily.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Fear not, from henceforth thou shalt catch men. With these words at the commissioning of his first disciples, Andrew, the first called apostle, and his brother Peter, Christ put an indelible mark upon his church in the foretelling of the Great Commission, the conversion of the listeners on Pentecost, and the coming evangelical labors throughout the known world. Christ stamps the character of the church as being clearly apostolic, an attribute that we confess to this day, one holy Catholic and apostolic church. Now, this account given in the Gospel of Matthew and Mark is in a slightly different form than what we heard today in the Gospel of Luke. Today, incidentally, marks what the church calls the first Sunday of Luke, which always follows the Sunday after the exaltation of the cross. And our gospel readings change from Matthew, which we've had from the time of Pentecost, over to Luke. And I say that the gospel account that we hear today is slightly different than the other two because it focuses on a different outcome than the story in the Gospels of Matthew and Mark. And this is one of the blessings of having three synoptic Gospels, is that we may get up to three different viewpoints of the same event and come to a more complete understanding then of what Christ was saying and doing as a result. In the accounts of Matthew and Mark, the focus is on the calling of the apostles. But in Luke, we get a certain extra insight. In Luke, we read how Christ had come to the lake of Gennesaret and found the fishermen already mending their nets. And the people were pressing on him, so he asked Peter to push his ship just a little bit off the land, and he teaches the people from the ship. And when he finishes, he says to Peter, "Cast out into the deep and let down your nets." And Peter says to him, "Master, we've toiled all the night and have taken nothing. Nevertheless, at thy word, I will let down the net." And we know what happens next. We have the gospel icon on the analogian today, actually the miraculous catch of fish. And so great a catch of fish that Peter's ship begins to sink, and they call another ship over, and it begins to sink. And Peter and James and John are all so astonished at this miracle that Peter says to Christ, "Depart from me, I'm a sinful man." And Christ answers him and says those words, "Fear not, from henceforth thou shalt catch men." And we're told that the apostles then forsook everything. They gave up everything, and they followed him. So while the accounts of the calling of the apostles in Matthew and Mark focus on the apostles themselves, the account in Luke contains this recounting of the miraculous catch of fish. That's not in the other two gospel accounts. The account in Luke focuses not on the apostles, but it focuses on the church that they will build. Now, why the church? We'll get there in a minute. But before we do, let's not think that these apostles who were commissioned and sent by Christ stepped onto pristine and fertile ground. When we hear the wonders of the evangelical works of the apostles, it's tempting sometimes to think that they must have had it easy, but that's certainly not what history teaches us about what the apostles went through. I mean, you think, oh, the people were more ready, but these were the same people that crucified Christ. So let's not think that the apostles had it easier than we do today. Remember when Christ asked Peter to launch his ship out in the deep, what does Peter say? "Master, we've toiled all the night and have taken nothing." And while Peter might be speaking of his own failed night out on the lake, the fathers of the church tell us that what he's really speaking about is something a bit greater, and that is the years of failure under the teachers of the law for generations upon generations, for all the years under the Torah, under the Old Covenant, for all the strictures of the law, all the wisdom of the teachers, all the foresight of the prophets, the teachers of the law had not saved a single man. They had toiled in the darkness as surely as Peter and his crew must have toiled that night before and yielded a similar catch of nothing. And now they would be replaced with the sending of the apostles. Now, apostle in English comes from the Greek apostolos, meaning a delegate, a messenger, or more broadly, one who is sent. And these, we know, would be sent into the whole world. But that morning, they were there about to step into the shoes of the teachers of the law and replace them. And at that moment, when they willingly undertake the obedience of the master, when at his word they cast out into the deep and let down that net, we read that they enclosed such a multitude of fish that their net broke. And they were taking so many fish, their ship began to sink, and they called another ship over. We're told that Peter's ship represents the synagogues of the Jews and many in the land who would come out of the synagogues and follow Christ. But the second ship represents not only the Gentiles, but the teachers of every age right up to the end of time. Teachers who continue even to this day to call everybody into the ship, into the ark of salvation. St. Bede, an English Orthodox saint, says the filling of these ships goes on even until the end of the world. Now, if you've ever seen a video of fishermen where a fish actually jumps out of the river, out of the ocean or the lake and into their boat, it's pretty amazing to watch. They're just sitting there fishing, all of a sudden this fish flies up out of the air, plops down in front of them, and flops around on the boat. It's amazing, but it's not really the usual means by which fish are caught. You know, fishing can in fact be quite a toil, like Peter had toiled the night before. Even in these days, you have to get up at the right time when the fish are feeding, and you have to be still because you can't go racing your boat over where the fish are feeding or you're not going to catch anything. And then there's this other thing about fish, they really don't want to be caught. They're just out looking for food to be fed. So when you catch them, you have to be a little clever. You might use a lure that looks like food or hide your hook in a tasty piece of bait, but you have to draw the fish in because for the most part, they really just want to be left alone to keep on swimming around aimlessly. But that wasn't the lot of the apostles, and it's not what Christ asks us today. With our own baptism, each one of us, in a sense, becomes an apostle. We rise out of the cleansing water of the baptismal font, and we're sent back out into the world. Maybe as children, maybe as adults, but we're sent, and we're sent with a message. Some fishermen fish for a living. They toil on the seas night and day to yield a harvest that sustains them. And other fishermen are avid hobbyists. They go out every weekend, ask them where they've been. It's not even daylight yet on Saturday and the boat's gone and they're out fishing. And then others just go fishing once in a while. Maybe they do it, maybe the wife goes with her husband because he's been bugging her, or they fish on a vacation or a family camping trip. But they just go out and they throw their hook in the water. But they're fishing. Fishing isn't the exclusive purview of the professionals. Anyone can walk down to Walmart, walk away with all the tools they need to become a fisherman, if only for a day. In the same way, the fishing of men today is not the exclusive territory of bishops and priests. Now, it doesn't require any special license or equipment. You don't need to buy your own boat. You can stand on the shore and cast your hook in. All you need to fish is to offer the same invitation that Philip offered to Nathanael when he found him. Philip finds Nathanael sitting under a tree, and he says, "We found the one Moses who wrote about in the law, the one the prophets foretold, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." And Nathanael looks at him and says, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" And what does Philip say? "Come and see." Come and see, said Philip. This powerful invitation is all it takes to fish in our little river, even from our very dry banks. One by one, Orthodox Christians around the land would just drop this little hook in the water. We'd begin to continue to fill the boats. The apostles were sent into all nations. If anyone ever doubted that the church is for all nations, they can just look around our little parish here. You don't have to be Greek to be here. We love our Greeks. You don't have to be Arab or Russian, but we love how the different cultures that have long roots of historic orthodoxy enrich us even here in the Texas Hill Country. English, Latin American, African American, Orthodox from the cradle or born of water and the spirit of adults, we all come into the boat. We all jump into that boat, or we're caught in the nets. We're dragged into that boat. Orthodoxy is for everyone. All they have to do is come and see. And that's the challenge to each of us. Let out our nets if we're got a big boat. And if we don't have a big boat, just cast that hook out there. Come and see. The first apostles were fishermen, and they replaced the formally trained and educated teachers of the law. And they spread the true faith across the universe. In many ways, our call is much simpler. If we just let the light of Christ shine in us, if we just let the joy of our common salvation be seen by all, that's the bait on our hook. If we live in the joy of orthodoxy, others should want to live in the same way that we live. They said of the early Christians that they will know them by their love. If you love one another, they'll know you're my disciples. That's all it takes. Love God, love your neighbor. If you truly love your neighbor, ask them to come and see. Don't leave them alone in that lake. It's dark down there. Brothers and sisters, as we depart today, let us remember that God has called each of us. He's made us apostles. He sent us forth as apostles in our own right to aid in the filling of the nets, even to the end of time. Let us live that high calling fearlessly as the apostles did before us, being known by our love and by our joy for all that see us. And let us ever remember that there's always room for one more in the net. May God count us worthy fishermen during our time in this world and grant us all rest in the next world through his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, glory to Jesus Christ.
Thanks for listening to Hill Country Homilies. For more information, visit Holy Annunciation Orthodox Church at www.annunciationtx.com. And please join us again next week.